Hello, everyone. Welcome to this episode of SBJ Live. I'm Dan Kaufman with Sports Business Journal. This is elevating fan engagement with data and AI, tips, trends, and insights, and it's presented by Snowflake. Thank you very much for being here. As you're joining the SBJ Live platform here, if you've been to an SBJ Live episode before, thank you for coming back. But you'll also know that there are two things that I tell everyone at the outset, and I'm going to reiterate them before we even get into introducing our panelists and going through our discussion questions. And those two things are very important for you to have the best experience with this SBJ Live. They are both related to your engagement. So the first one is we want you to introduce yourself in the chat bubble on the right-hand side that you see. Tell us who you are, who you work with, and where you're coming from. And if you see people who you know, feel free to message them as well. We really love that type of interaction and engagement. And I hope to see some people message in there shortly. It looks like some people are getting started. So please introduce yourself, tell us who you are, and say hello to your friends and colleagues who are in the room here. And then right next to the chat bubble is a questions bubble. That's where we want your questions. Don't wait till the end. There's no specific Q&A period at the end. Submit your questions throughout this discussion as soon as they pop into your head. And you can upvote questions. So upvote the questions that you want to make sure that we get to. We will do our best to get to as many audience questions as we can. I see folks introducing themselves. Thank you so much. I am going to introduce our panelists and we will get started. We have Micheline Rabbit. She is the industry principal, sports and music at Snowflake. Marty Mercado, lead creative strategist at Braze. And Vadim Drozdovsky, VP of growth at WSC Sports. Thank you all for doing this. Let's flip to a slide here as people are joining, and I'm going to jump a couple slides to this one because I'm going to give Marty a chance to tell us a little bit about what he does in his company. Marty.
Great. Thanks, Dan. Hi, everyone. My name is Marty Mercado. I sit in Boston, Massachusetts, but I work for Braze. And for those unfamiliar, Braze is a customer engagement platform. We have about 1,600 plus employees across 10 offices around the world. We serve about 6 billion monthly active users, have sent 2.2 trillion messages, and processed over 13 trillion consumer-generated data points with little to no downtime. The channels we're involved with include push, email, SMS, WhatsApp, in-app messages, in-browser messages, etc. I sit within our strategic consulting team in our 427 Innovation Lab. I'm the lead creative strategist there, and we help our customers come up with creative ideas and creative use cases on how to use Braze to be absolutely engaging.
Thank you, Marty. All right, Vadim, you're up.
Thanks, Dan. I'm a VP of growth at WSC Sports. And what we do is basically provide a platform and set of solutions that help rights holders, sports rights holders, basically create, distribute, and monetize sports video content. Basically, most of the highlights you've probably seen across the digital ecosystem, usually we have something to do with it. So we work with more than 500 clients globally. Quite a big company, 500 employees across 10 different offices and 5 continents, and automating content creation across 40 sports types and counting.
Thank you, Vadim. Micheline.
Yeah, thanks, Dan. So as you mentioned, Micheline Rabbit, I am our industry principal for sports here at Snowflake. Formerly was with Amazon, Bleacher Report, and Yahoo Sports, doing strategic partnerships. And at Snowflake, so we are a data platform that started out as a data warehouse. And now as a platform, you can really leverage us, across all of your data collaboration, data science, and other activation use cases, either through our native capabilities or through our amazing network of partners like Braze. We are super fortunate that we get to work with hundreds of customers across the sports ecosystem. So from leagues, teams, federations, to sports books, to media, ticketing, merch, et cetera. We really kind of cover the whole ecosystem in terms of kind of how they're leveraging our platform. And it's across really all use cases. As you can see here, kind of bird's eye view in terms of how we're leveraged varies by entity. But a simple way to think about it is both on the fan engagement and monetization side of the house, which I know is the focus of our discussion today, but we're also used heavily for sport operations use cases as well, such as player health and safety, performance strategies, et cetera.
Thank you, Micheline. All right, I see plenty of folks who are actively engaging with us in the chat. Thank you very much. I also saw a question come through from Brian Rotatori. Brian asked if we can turn a transcript on. Loren or Meggie, if you are in the background here and you know how to turn that on, I would love it if you could. But Brian, I apologize if we can't do it. We should do it, and we'll make sure we do it on our next episode of Live. Let's start with this. So in some of the prep material that we worked on leading into this episode, I saw the use of a phrase that I'd seen before, but I don't think I'd really focused in on. And that phrase was data connectivity. What do we mean when we say data connectivity? Micheline, I'm going to start with you, and then we'll pass it to the group.
Yeah, so I guess when I think about data connectivity, I think about kind of the full funnel of first starting with collecting the data, and then of course getting into analyzing the data, being able to collaborate on the data, activate on the data. And I think, I mean, obviously the initial hurdle is of course that data collection aspect, right? So sports, like many verticals in recent years, has made a lot of advancements in terms of the data that can actually be connected, or collected, excuse me. So thinking about things like how you can actually pinpoint exactly which seat a fan is sitting in the stadium, not necessarily by having their ticket information, but literally using Wi-Fi signals. The fact that you can use the data on a fan's face to grant them access, grant them entry access in lieu of holding a paper ticket. We're really seeing kind of, obviously there's been kind of a massive kind of sea change in terms of all the, data collection that is, of course, consent-based happening. And so I think that, we've really kind of reached the critical mass now where, yes, of course, that data collection is going to continue to expand, but now we're at a point where there's enough data for all of kind of the entities within the ecosystem to really start to focus on analyzing and collaborating and activating on that data in a really impactful way. I think we've hardly even scratched the surface on that front. The use cases are endless. But it's all a matter of again, kind of prioritizing what makes sense to focus on first based on your business needs. But I think it's pretty exciting, especially as someone who spent kind of my entire career focused on how to make fans happier. I think data is kind of the real piece of the puzzle that's going to drive kind of the next chapter of how we do that better.
Thanks, Micheline. Marty or Eddie, anything to add to that Micheline summarized that?
Sure. From our perspective, where we deal a lot with customer engagement, when we talk about data connectivity, we're looking really beyond just the gathering of that fan information, right? We're talking about being able to unite those data points into a single holistic view of the individual fan. So in other words, it's about bridging the silos. So, with all the data points coming in, whether it's ticketing history, streaming behavior, mobile app usage, in-stadium purchases, social engagement, all of it coming together to sort of really inform a richer, more nuanced understanding of the fan. So by creating sort of this unified data layer, brands and teams would be able to act on real-time insights a lot quicker and deliver more meaningful and contextually relevant experience at the perfect moment. So, this could mean using interconnected data signals to recognize when a fan just finished watching a highlight reel of their favorite team after the game, and then sending them an additional personalized push notification about maybe limited edition merchandise or an upcoming event locally. So for us, that data connectivity at its core really enables you to connect the dots so you can deliver truly compelling and personalized fan journeys that meet and exceed like the expectations of the fan.
Thank you, Marty. Vadim?
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think that I totally agree with Micheline and Marty here as well. Is like, we've been doing WSC content creation, automatic content creation for more than 10 years. And I think the missing piece was, how do I understand more about the fan? How do I understand more about who we're engaging with in order to actually maximize the value of each of these, automated content creation flows to hit the right fans at the right time. And all of that really starting to come together where, data starts to become more integrated and into the content creation workflows and the fan experiences. So definitely I really see an uplift in engagement, obviously, and the value that can be generated through that engagement because of that extra layer of understanding the fan.
Micheline, I'm going to jump back to you. We've said the word data multiple times. Let's talk through actually what type of data we are collecting now from fans. What's the most valuable fan data, and what's some data that might not even be considered fan data that's valuable to collect? Sorry, you're muted still, Micheline.
Sorry about that. So as Marty spoke to, a sports fan's journey, as we all know, is incredibly fragmented, right? Like the platform I choose to stream my games on might be different from the platform I choose to collect my highlights from, different from where I place my bets, play my fantasy, et cetera, et cetera. So we're really seeing, honestly, knowing that kind of a sports fan is so multifaceted, we're really seeing kind of the most successful sports organizations who leverage Snowflake kind of collect all of those data points, right? Like what, merch is being purchased, what, again, kind of what games are being kind of viewed at home versus attended live, et cetera, et cetera. We get asked the question, as you can imagine, very often, which data is most valuable to collect? And I guess the way I usually answer that is, if you think about any given sports fan, every sports fan's journey is incredibly nuanced, right? Like no one engages with sports in the same way, right? So you really have to kind of start with, I mean, coming from a data platform, of course, you may expect me to say this, but like you really have to start with trying to kind of build out the most robust profile of your fan as you can, get to know them, get to know their behaviors. And then from there, you can kind of work backwards and start to deprioritize data that might not matter as much to your fan base. So to give you an example, based on my past behaviors as a fan, you might notice that I bought a whole lot of Warriors tickets. I've watched a whole lot of Warriors games. So the Warriors might look at me as, oh, this is a great potential candidate for a season ticket offer. However, if you go over here and look at my Fanatics data, you might see that I just bought a toddler-sized Steph Curry jersey, right? So I'm not in the near future looking to kind of basically force other Warriors fans at Chase Center to have to deal with a screaming toddler throughout the season in the near future. But instead, what could be interesting to me is send me a ticket offer for a family night. Send me some offers for maybe some sponsor-funded, kid-friendly concession options. So I guess like the point being, until you kind of took a look at that last piece of data over at Fanatics, you didn't really know the full story of who I am and how you should engage with me. So again, once you know your fans, you can work backwards and start to deprioritize based on KPIs. But first, you have to figure out who your fans are in order to figure out what data is most relevant, in my opinion.
Thank you. Marty,
Sure. I think sort of beyond the personal fan data too, right? Like you can look at sort of some non-fan data inputs too. So for example, weather data. That'll be especially important for people dealing with sports books or playing with fantasy sports where, hey, it's snowing in Cincinnati. What does that mean for, Joe Burrow's plus minus for his passing yards? They're probably going to run the ball a lot more. So all of those inputs and signals that are coming from even outside of sort of your typical fan data and just coming from either weather or culture or anything that can really fill the context to create that added value content for the fans is also incredibly important. Even something as simple, Micheline, to jump on your example, right? They bought the Steph Curry Warriors jersey, and if we know it's going to be cold during family night, then maybe that's a good opportunity to upsell you a beanie or a little sweatshirt, something like that. So I think there's a lot of ways where they can sort of interconnect both fan data and just things happening out in the world to enhance that fan experience.
Vadim, I've gone to you last on all three of these, but I promise I'm going to go to you first on the next one. But you've got the last word on this one.
Okay, you're keeping the best for that. Good. Basically, what I would say is, like, for me, is I always try to. It really resonated with what Micheline said, because like I think I'm trying to look back from like action to insight to data. Like which data will I need to draw insights to kind of inform my next action, and that's how I try to understand which data is more valuable. Sometimes it's not that obvious, but like you figure it out over time. For me, just like a really simple example illustrates this. Whenever we deliver content, sometimes it's in game, and when it's one size fits all, you really lose a lot of opportunities to engage right fans in the right ways. For example, if we know there's a fan who's on the go, is not watching right now, not tuned into their first screen OTT, I will probably deliver more kind of informative catch-up highlight. Whether it's a fan that is watching right now, and I want to send him something interesting. Perhaps I know that he has a specific fantasy player on his team, so I'm going to inform you, you actually, there's another layer of information you should probably receive because you already know the basics. So I think all of these things kind of just create much richer experience, segmented per fan. That's what we're all trying to achieve.
Yeah. And let's stay with you for a second. I promise I go to you first, but this one I want to actually let's really break it down. Let's walk through the experience for a fan who might be getting delivered some sort of digital content on their phone or otherwise. And let's walk through almost chronologically, like pre-game, during game, post-game, and then off-season. So those kind of 4 categories. Vadim, kick us off.
Sounds good. No, it's actually a good way, a good framework to think about it. So I think, the way we started thinking about it a few years ago when we started kind of creating, we understood we could create literally any content package for any time, around the match itself. We started to create these kind of, bespoke packages for each of these time frames. So we started asking ourselves kind of general questions. What do fans care about before a match? So it's basically more high building, information. What do I need to know about that match before? Do I even do I want to watch it? Why should I watch it? And so on. And then you create content that answers these questions. Perhaps some pre-match interviews, some kind of last-minute information about injuries. Also lace in some kind of past match content, and basically make that kind of anticipatory period more exciting for fans. Then in game, it really does depend. Which type of fan am I watching? Am I not watching? Is my team losing? Is my team winning? And kind of create, a bespoke piece of content that really speaks to what I need to know at that particular moment. And then post game, obviously, it's all about, okay, so has my it was a good outcome for me? Do I know if my fan? I literally don't want to get a post match highlight if my team lost. I just would not enjoy it. So I know the score and that's fine for me. But if my team lost, I might be really engaged with a 10-minute prolonged highlight, really dwelling on specific moments. I'm so excited, I really want to. So really know who your fan is and deliver that specific piece of content to them. And then you start layering in is he a fantasy player? Is he a punter, right? Okay. He might also want to know a little bit, about, how his activity across these different, adjacent, verticals has been, and use content to enhance that engagement as well, right? We don't want to just read something. We want that content to be kind of a driver to anything. So I think kind of everything to do about answering top of mind questions for each fan, but just answering them in a way that resonates with the specific. So the fan says, okay, this is actually something I would ask and not a general fan would ask. That's probably how we think about it. And then off season is really Michelin said she's a young mother, right? So I would probably say she probably doesn't have a lot of time catching up to all the kind of trade news or draft news or everything coming up, but she still wants to be informed, right? So I would probably for that type of fan, we'll probably create a weekly recap of everything she missed, but with a nice video integrated into it. So it's exciting, it doesn't feel like she's missing anything. For a more kind of day-to-day fan, I would probably say, okay, let's go deep into the numbers. Let's integrate a lot of data there, so the fan can actually say, hey, they're speaking to me. I'm a savvy kind of fan. I want that extra layer of, okay, I will know how to handle an extra layer of data, so I'll probably give it to them. So it really does kind of all focus on what the fan would expect to get, and then try to serve it to them.
Yeah, thank you, Vadim. We've got some good questions from the audience coming in. I'm going to read one of them from Chan Wook Du. Thank you for the question. What is a good approach to maintain fan engagement during the preseason? Please compare the preseason and the offseason. So Marty, if you want to address that question specifically, or if you want to touch on any other segments, please go ahead.
Sure. I think obviously it will depend on the sports that you follow and sort of that preseason, postseason structure that happens with it, right? So take the NFL, for example. Postseason will really be all about obviously celebrating the Super Bowl champions, and then you start getting into the draft combine. So that's going to bring in a certain set of fans that are going to be interested in, okay, who are the prospects? And then you get into free agency. So I think there are several touch points and moments within the preseason for world football, for example. The transfer window is always going to be trending during the summer and the winter, whenever the transfer season is happening. And it's going to be all about following, who is my team going to sign or not sign, so that they can complain about who they signed or not, or if their favorite players renew their contract, or it's also an opportunity just knowing in terms of building your audience too. Like, not all people, I'm a Liverpool fan. I know that sometimes people support Liverpool because Mohamed Salah plays for Liverpool or Virgil van Dijk plays for Liverpool. So if, hopefully, fingers crossed, Mohamed Salah and Virgil both renew their contracts, then that's a big piece of information that we can use to, get fans in Egypt to re-engage with the club, or fans of the Netherlands to re-engage with the club. So I think there's certain touch points and storylines really that really you can use sort of in collaboration with the data, like knowing what types of these stories the fandom loves, that you can start jumping on.
Thank you, Marty. Micheline, I'll give you the next word on this question, and then I'll jump into the question follow-up if you'd like.
Yeah, sure. I mean, I guess the only thing I would just kind of add to agree, obviously, with all of Vadim and Marty's points, but the only thing I would add was in addition to kind of providing those great content experiences, and I think this applies from preseason through off season, but kind of a personalized approach to rewarding fans, right? So yes, you're rewarding them with a great personalized content experience, but also, are there other things that you can be doing to, for example, maybe if your fans purchase tickets to next season within a certain window after the schedule is announced, right? And they get some certain kind of bonus points that they can leverage towards concessions, merch, et cetera. I think a key is kind of rewarding fan behavior. And another example would be, I kind of want to be treated differently if I viewed a game versus if I attended a game in person. If I attended a game in person, I want my teams to know that, and I want them to respond in a different way than if I gone and grabbed TikTok highlights, for example. And so I think that's another big kind of personalization opportunity in terms of know what your fan kind of likes in terms of other content, other kind of entertainment, et cetera, and incorporate those into kind of the rewards that you can personalize and offer to them for their behaviors.
Braze, I'm going to have you start to answer this question. Let's jump to more of a focus on AI, and let's talk about how AI has been used, good examples you've seen of AI to drive fan loyalty or to maintain fan loyalty, and then also talk us through, if you could, examples of KPIs that are used to show the success of that application.
Sure. In terms of using AI, it's really...
I apologize, Marty. I said Braze, but you understood it. Marty.
Yes. So yeah, we have been seeing several personalization use cases that really stand out, right? And those tend to hinge on delivering, sort of echoing what Vadim said, and we all say delivering that right content at the right time through the right channel. So for leagues and teams, for example, personalization that might come through serving fans with hyper-relevant ticketing upgrades or merchandise offers, and they can use something like intelligent timing that we have at Braze for that, where we know they are most likely to engage with us right after a game or right before a game, so that's when you send them the offer or the promotion. And then another piece of that will be AI can really help supercharge your testing, right? When it comes to channel orchestration, like, Dan, are you someone who is an email guy? And Micheline is most likely to respond to, app notifications. So just understanding the user behavior when it comes to how they are messaged to and get those promotions and those messagings from brands and teams. AI really allows you to sort of supercharge that testing to be able to really clean up your data and be able to reach the right people in the right channel. And then on the media side, I think a big win there comes from, content and frequency optimization. So think about, again, goes back to sort of variant testing, like, are people more likely to respond to a rich push notification with like a GIF on it, or just like a regular push notification, or even like a WhatsApp message? So just understanding those channels and being able to experiment with, Are you more likely to watch highlight reels versus in-depth analysis in stats? So being able to understand the content consumption of the user is something that AI really can help, again, supercharge through testing at scale. And then sports books would follow really a similar principle too, right? So real time is going to be even more important for something like a sports books with sort of live spreads and stats. So using AI powered predictions to really surface the right betting suggestions at precisely the right moment. If you have a parlay that's hanging on by a thread, that's like a good time to like reach them. So I think on the testing side, that's really where AI has been able to help our customers really be able to personalize and get a lot smarter when it comes to not just sort of the data collection, but the orchestration on what and how and where they're reaching their consumers eventually.
I'm going to bring up an audience question that came through because it was relevant to something you said, Marty, which was like, oh, maybe Dan, we engaged with Dan on email. This is from BR, and he or she says, for fan engagement, what channels do you see get the best response? Email, text, push? Micheline, feel free to address that question or address the AI question and maybe give us some KPIs that you've seen that have been really helpful.
Yeah, I mean, it kind of goes back to my previous point of I don't know if there's necessarily kind of a silver bullet in terms of like this is the channel to focus on. Again, I mean, and that's why you're seeing kind of a lot of experimentation with new, right? With teams launching their own direct-to-consumer streaming services and things like that. But yeah, certainly when you offer fans rewarding app experiences, we've seen a lot of teams be successful in driving ticket sales, et cetera, in relation. But again, it's really a mix, and you have to kind of get to know your fans and work backwards from there. But yes, all those certainly in play in terms of yes for sure app, yes for sure social, yes for sure kind of leveraging your broadcast partners and things like that.
Vadim, I'll jump to you. There are KPIs in your experience in using AI for fan loyalty examples that you might be able to share?
Yeah, sure. So yeah, it's I think it just unlocks another degree of freedom, right? When you create pieces of content for different fans and you get instantaneous feedback loop through their engagement, you can learn so much about the way they want to consume their highlights. For example, we create this neat kind of story, like Instagram story type of highlight that like is basically building up as the game progresses. And we've learned over kind of A/B testing and analyzing different engagement patterns. Some people want to start from the exciting moment. They want to start from the goal, right? Like that's the first thing I want to see. I don't care about chronology. I just want to go from the first, like the most important thing, and then I'm gonna go backwards, right? And some people really find that annoying. Like they don't really stay with that experience if you serve it to them. So like they really want it chronologically. This is like 5th minute, this is 12th minute. The goal was like 35th minute, right? So it really is like eye-opening to because we all kind of believe we are the model for how highlights should look like, right? We really feel personal about like the way we want to consume content. We sometimes feel like this is the way everybody should consume them, and that's the way kind of in past editorial teams probably looked at highlights. This is the proper way to deliver a highlights reel, and now we just understand like everything else. It's about preferences. People like things differently. So kind of that like for me it was like the most transformative way to see how data really can impact the way content can should be served to enhance value for each fan.
We've got a great question from the audience that I'm going to jump to now. It's from Tyler Dillard. Tyler says, we've talked about past purchasing behavior and fandom touch points. How do we think about leveraging financial indicators or other data points which might indicate a fan's propensity or capacity for larger purchases and longer term commitments? Anyone want to jump on that one?
I can kick it off. I would say that's certainly a common theme that we're seeing more and more in terms of like what's the other data sports entities are collecting. So purchase behavior is a big one, looking at credit card purchase behavior, right? So it could be as granular as you're a sports book, and you might be able to see kind of what transactions this fan is making with other sports books, right? So they could be a great kind of target opportunity. It could be, again, what other brands are they purchasing from that you might want to think about incorporating into your loyalty program. It could be about kind of understanding kind of how they spend with you versus against merchandise for another team, for example, and kind of opportunities there. But financial data, certainly a strong factor, because again, it's all about kind of really enriching that understanding of who your fans are.
Yeah, I think in addition to that, taking signals such as, I don't know, season ticket holders are probably going to be more likely to purchase other things within the package. So, Micheline, to your point, right, like understanding sort of from a loyalty perspective, like what partners should we be getting by understanding sort of their other behaviors sort of outside of or complementary to their fandoms. And then same with, someone buying seats at the bleachers is probably going to have a different purchasing behavior to someone buying box seats versus someone sitting courtside. So just understanding those signals too, because they're probably going to have a different type of fandom and different relationship with the team, which, they're all still fans in and of themselves, but there are sort of different motivators that get them there, right? Same with, I think, a really underutilized persona, for lack of a better term, are the people who sort of live out of state, right? Like a Chicago Bulls fan who lives in LA, or someone who graduated from Michigan State who now lives in Florida, just reaching those folks and being able to still deliver them that personalized content to keep that fandom going, even though they feel a little bit separated from the team, especially as, organizations try to push globally now. NFL just announced that Munich's going to have their first NFL game. So how do you it's easy to get like 50,000 people to the stadium for like the one-off NFL game, right? How do you get all those people to stick around when Tampa's back playing in Tampa and Jacksonville's back playing in Jacksonville, and keep sort of that motivation to watch the NFL going in Germany? So that's sort of the big question. So retention is definitely the key, because it's easy to like attract people to big moments, but being able to keep them around is really the challenge there.
Speaking of retention, there's a question that came through from the audience that I initially scrolled over and was like, I don't know if I'm going to get to that one, but then I saw that it has 3 upvotes. And as I thought about it, it's actually a great question. It comes from David Berman, and David says, how can a losing team utilize data to keep fans? I might rephrase that a little bit and say, like, are there best practices for a team that is having a tough season on the court or on the field that they should be doing slightly differently than a team that has won? Feel free to jump in, anyone, or I'm happy to call on someone.
I can give some like practical examples, because obviously, you can't have great team every season, but I think a lot of the times is consistency in communication, authenticity of communication really matters in this type of moment. So I think that kind of adapting like to a scenario where like that season is not going that great by for example, giving more lacing in more of authentic player interviews, and really showing kind of the other side, like to the fan, like the player is having a hard time, and kind of going there, like this is kind of a journey, this is a marathon, this is not a sprint. A lot of the times like we see these pieces of content get really strong engagement during kind of periods of the team not doing great, and we see the other way around, where you stick to the same things, you kind of let's do the highlights, or even let's go to the past, kind of let's remind, like but kind of disregard the fact that it's not a great season for the team. I think like we see kind of that backfire sometimes. So I think it's all about being authentic, and kind of eye level with your fan base really gets you to kind of to mitigate some of these challenging periods.
Yeah, I think that's where data doesn't necessarily have like the silver bullet for that, because that is a very human emotion, right? Like when your team stinks, you're not going to be very motivated to watch. And again, it depends on which sport. For American sports in particular, if you do have a losing record, then you could probably focus more on the draft, because you're going to have a high draft pick. So how is your front office sort of getting for the future? Because we are going to get that quarterback for the future, unless you're a Jets fan, I guess. But at the same time, to Vadim's point, that authenticity play is going to be really important, because you do have to sort of meet your fans where they are, right? You can't keep talking about how great your team is when clearly and objectively they're not doing great. So we've seen examples, at least on social, right? I think it was the Lions who are really good with like their memes where they wouldn't even post like the final score. It's just like we lost by a lot or something like that. But just like adding that layer of humor, bring like a ray of happiness in a very sad moment in a sports fan's day, could help a lot. And then the other thing that we often pitch is Vadim, I think you also mentioned earlier that you're probably not going to want to watch highlights of your team losing. So definitely avoid those. But if you have a rival team, like if Liverpool's losing, what's going to make me feel better is to watch Manchester United get beat up or Manchester City get beat up. So maybe send me highlights of those other teams or my rivals losing, knowing that I have my favorite team. We're not doing so hot, but other teams, the Schadenfreude could work there.
I would just say that I think that's where like kind of the personalized rewards can come into play too, right? Like as Marty kind of mentioned, make sure that you're rewarding your fans when they do engage if you're having a tough season. And then the other thing I would say is like really what we've seen kind of teams do is focus on building that sense of community among their fan bases and connecting fans. So everyone knows, when your team makes the playoffs, you don't want to be considered a bandwagon fan. You want to talk about how you've been there the whole time and you've engaged with your community, et cetera. So fostering that, like the enticement to kind of continue to build that, I guess community and foundation with other fans will make make everyone enjoy kind of when you do make the playoffs next time around, everyone enjoy it that much more.
Micheline, I'm going to you and transition a little bit. Let's talk about like the actual fan experience in the venue and some important fan engagement opportunities that are available for teams and leagues at literally in the venue, and how we're using data and potentially AI to improve those touch points.
Yeah, I think what we're seeing right now for those parts is a big focus on leveraging data and AI, more so for kind of like stadium, arena, security, kind of logistics optimization. So more so things like I mentioned, the ticketless entry. I mentioned, kind of Wi-Fi to know kind of where fans are within the stadium so that you can monitor, kind of occupancy of bathrooms and things like that. So I think that's what we're seeing the most right now. So also like, video surveillance just for safety reasons, for example. So that is partially, again, based on kind of, there's a P&L impact of course, right? Like you don't want to overstock your concession stands kind of based on what the data shows. But then there's also this aspect of our ultimate goal is we want fans to be able to sit in their seats and enjoy the game for as much of the game as they can be. So part of that's not a personalized approach, right? But I think kind of every sports fan would appreciate that. I think kind of where it's evolving more towards, of course, is more of these personalization opportunities. We've all seen kind of the posts and video of the Intuit Dome, if we haven't been there live, in terms of the great, like you're welcomed by name on the digital display when you enter the arena. You're rewarded based on how loud you're cheering, things like that. I think we're not seeing a lot of teams kind of at that point yet. There's also a lot of personal investment going into being able to enable that as well. But where we are starting to see kind of more growth is, again, personalized concession offers, personalized, for example, you might kind of, after a game, based on what you know about me as a fan, maybe I get a personalized offer for a cup of coffee, right? Because you happen to know I live an hour and a half from the stadium, and now I need to get in the car and drive home. With also, by the way, here's a map just for you in terms of how to get back to your parking spot. So we're starting to kind of see things kind of move more in that direction. But I would say that right now it's really kind of focused on like more so kind of like optimizing logistics and security. If kind of just based on current.
I'm going to Vadim, a question for you that we talked about a little bit in the prep call, and I want to bring it up now. The distinction between generative AI, which is a lot of the buzz around like ChatGPT and others, and what I might call traditional AI. Are you seeing applications of generative AI specifically that teams, leagues, others have used in the sports industry? And if so, what have been some that you've seen that have been really successful when it comes to fan experience, fan engagement?
Sure. No, it's a great question. I think that, as like every industry, like, in media specifically, you already start seeing a lot of like the implications and will just become more and more robust. So the kind of the sparrows in the coal mine, so to speak, are, like stuff that, just really translate well, like, kind of general solutions that Gen AI that translate really well to sports. So for example, like AI dubbing, or kind of multilingual closed caption, stuff like that. That really kind of we already implement across like a variety of our different products. So basically, kind of just either explicitly allow like a user to select, or even implicitly basically understanding what the user's preferred language is, and basically serving them that content in that language. That really is kind of really for leagues that are going global, really provides a massive opportunity to really engage with a lot more audiences in a much deeper way. That's kind of very simple integration, but like really unlocks a lot of new value. Then kind of go in the extra layer. If you then kind of started working on it, like you understand, like you're writing an article about a specific sporting event, and you can match a video to that, but that video will basically not be created by anyone, but just taking the most important kind of insights from that article, and based on that kind of create a clip by clip kind of highlights reel, or kind of compilation that will correlate well with that text. That's something amazing, because first of all, you can do it really scalably, and second, it's much more engaging than just reading an article, right? So like I think all of this stuff, and then kind of going even beyond that, and like we're playing around with a lot of really cool stuff in hackathons, where we replace real like LeBron James with Spider-Man dunking and stuff like that, and like for kids, and like there's like so many things we'll do down the road. So I really believe that it's going to become such a great world where everybody can really like play around with the like form factor and the media, and consume it the way they like. I think it would just be like a world I want to live in. So like I hope others do too.
Micheline, I'm going to jump to you with the next question. Are you seeing collaboration between teams and leagues? Collaboration between teams and leagues? Do we need more of that? In other words, the NBA collaborating and sharing data with Bulls or whoever it might be.
Yeah, I'm not able to mention which specific leagues, but absolutely, that's actually like a key Snowflake use case, both for leagues actually as well as federations as well, leveraging our platform actually to kind of share data back and forth with their member teams. So some examples would be, as we've talked about, based on all the fragmented touch points, the league knows different things about the fan than the team does. So they can actually help enrich the fan profiles of their member teams by sharing data, for example, national broadcaster data, right? Like the teams don't get that directly. Also aggregated insights, right? So all puns intended, the leagues are looking to level the playing field in terms of giving all of their member teams the opportunity to generate the most sponsorship revenue, generate the most ticket sales, generate the most season ticket holders, et cetera. So we're seeing a lot of sharing of aggregated insights from the league to all their member teams to kind of help inform best practices there. It's certainly driving a lot of value so far. And so we are only seeing really kind of those data sharing opportunities expand. Like a newer area is sharing stats related to player health and safety, right? So if the league is seeing certain trends across teams in terms of certain training strategies, for example, that are more or less impactful in terms of reducing injuries, they're sharing that out with member teams in order to kind of help inform there. Obviously staying fully away from performance strategy, but again, when it's about keeping players safe and healthy, seeing some collaboration there as well.
We've got time for one more question. So I'm going to leave the audience with this question. I'm going to ask each of you to give maybe one or two what I'll call actionable insights that you would recommend that someone in the audience takes with them from this SBJ Live and potentially can implement. And remember, the focus here is data connectivity, data collection, and using AI to make everything easier for fan experiences. Marty, can I start with you?
Sure. I know, obviously, this is more of a data program, but I am creative at heart. So for me, what I would say is don't get lost in the algorithm. That would be my piece of advice. And really, especially with sports and entertainment, right? Like start with it. It's a very emotional and personal journey for each fan. So really start with that and really ask yourself, okay, what kind of story do I want to tell this fan from the perspective of obviously my organization or my media conglomerate, or even better, what would I ask myself, right? Like what would I want to see as a fan? So you can use the AI as a really strong tool and all the data to get you towards those personalized content recommendations, timing optimizations, and targeted offers. But really being able to connect that data-driven intel you're getting from your platform or model with that core sense of fandom, right? Like the thrill of like a last-second win, or like the heartbreak of being on the losing end of that. The definition of fandom and loyalty, that means different things to different people as well. The nostalgia of seeing your championship team from the 60s or the 70s coming back. So data and AI, I think, gives you that head start of being able to aggregate a lot of these data signals at scale. But really, at the end of the day, it's still people talking to people. So I think we shouldn't lose that in the mix. So we can get smarter, but keep the emotion in there, because that's what makes sports fun.
Vadim, you're up next.
Yeah, so I like Marty's answer a lot. Yeah, no, I think that at the end of the day, I think that like starting with like for me, it's always like trying to ask kind of the why a few times. It's like, why am I doing this? Okay, it's like I want fans to consume my content. Why do I want fans to consume my content? Okay, in order to do this action, like this is what I want them to do next. This is like why, like I want them to stay, I want them to retain them, I want to grow loyalty. Why do I want to do, like, and get that fourth, fifth why, in order to understand, okay, like, so this is probably the way I would structure like my experiment and like serve them this type of content in order to measure what am I actually achieving. Because sometimes, kind of you stop with the basics, right? You say like, I want to engage fans, right? And like, okay, so like I engage them, like watch the content. Okay, how do I measure my long-term success derived from that initial engagement is something that I always want to keep in mind. So I always encourage, rights holders we work with to say, okay, so let's kind of like set a stage plan that says, what are my business KPIs that tie to that engagement, and work back from that, because that's the only way we can actually set kind of, kind of measurable KPIs that tie back to the business. We can justify what we're doing. So I think that like kind of asking yourself kind of several layers of why, in my opinion, is really important before you start kind of, strategizing and implementing.
Thank you, Vadim. Micheline, you get the last word, and it's not just the last word of that, it's the last word of SBJ Live for the year. Our last year. So Micheline, go ahead.
All right, pressure's on. Hopefully I can deliver. My big takeaway would be, for the data and analytics folks on the call, work with your partnerships team, and for the partnerships BD folks on the call, work with your data team, because as a former BD who used to negotiate rights deals, content distribution deals, et cetera, I know that often data, in terms of kind of how it's incorporated into partnership structure, can sometimes get kind of deprioritized in terms of deal structure. But if you work with your partnerships team to inform them of how impactful collecting data from partners can be on both yours and the partners' objectives, so that so that you have the right terms in place to be able to collaborate effectively on your data, it's really important. We're starting to see that get unlocked a lot more. Like, for example, traditionally, a lot of the ways that leagues have worked with their sportsbook partners are sponsor relationship. Now we're seeing that open up a bit to say, okay, well, actually what we'd love to understand is actually how are your players on your platform interacting with our property and with our member teams, et cetera. So work on making sure that you have kind of the relationships in place with your partners that will allow both of you to kind of maximize the opportunity to use data to impact those partnership KPIs even more impactfully than you might be currently.
Micheline, thank you. Marty, thank you. Thank you. Snowflake, thank you so much for the support. To the audience, thanks for joining us, and thank you for your questions, and thank you for your engagement. Have a great holiday season, everyone, and we will see you all back next year. Thank you.